to step in on this one?
Jelly, thanks very much for joining us. This has been something that we've been waiting for a long time. President Trump now saying that there is a deal with India. Tariffs go from 50% to 18%. He says that India has agreed to not buy any more Russian crude. There are many other claims there. Prime Minister Modi also tweeting to President Trump. Nisha, your first reactions on this finally seeing a breakthrough?
Well, finally is right, Shireen. It's wonderful to be with you, and particularly on this very momentous and historic day. I think we have all been waiting for quite some time for this trade agreement, and let me emphasize, this is a phase one or interim agreement. There is much additional work to be done between our two countries, but this is really an important moment where I think the U.S. and India have concluded this phase one agreement according to what was announced by both the president and the prime minister. While we're still waiting for all the details to come out, I do believe that this will both remove the 25% energy tariffs and the additional 25%, bring it down to 18%. We're waiting to get some additional details on that. In return, India is bringing down to zero on a number of different fronts. And really, fundamentally, if you take the U.S.-India deal along with the very historic deal last week between the EU and India, this stands to be just transformative in terms of the impact on the Indian economy, on India's trade and orientation towards Western economies like the U.S., EU, Canada, Australia, et cetera, and paves the way for just a much deeper strategic alignment between our two countries and economic alignment as well.
Yes, Nisha, just, to go back to some of the details that President Trump has put forward, and he says that India has agreed to zero tariffs. Now, we're still waiting for the Indian government to give an official reaction on this front, but it cannot possibly be zero tariffs across the board. What would you think?
I imagine that there is a lot more to be learned about what the specific terms were that were agreed to by the two sides, what remains yet to be negotiated. I know that in the negotiations that there had been a number of areas where India had agreed to come down on tariffs. But of course, what we were hearing from both sides along the way was nothing was final until everything is final. And so specifically which areas India may be prepared to come down to zero, which areas have yet to be negotiated, are all, I think, details that we're waiting to find out.
Yes, we are waiting to find out. But, this was a clear overhang for investors, both foreign portfolio investors as well as foreign direct investors. This does clear the air, even as the fine print is ironed out, Nisha, does it not?
It does clear a lot of the tension that was existing in the U.S.-India economic relationship. I think that the tariff overhang did create a lot of uncertainty for both U.S. businesses and Indian businesses. This puts us on a much more stable and optimistic footing. And I do believe that there is more to be done, particularly, this happens also as Minister Jaishankar is in Washington on a critical minerals conference that is going to talk about important, mineral supply chains and how we can ensure that economies like India, the U.S., and other aligned nations have secure supplies of these critical minerals for their various industries. So all of this, to me, signals that there is growing convergence and a growing recognition that India, the United States, Europe, despite areas of difference, of divergence, that there is some fundamental convergence on trying to ensure that our economies are integrated and able to trade more efficiently.
Yes, that of course is certainly the case. But, Nisha, what do you believe has led to this breakthrough finally? I mean, Sergio Gore has hit the ground running. He is, of course, part of President Trump's inner circle, the core team. And since he got to India, he's been, meeting with government officials, meeting with leaders, corporate India. What do you think has finally led to this breakthrough, which has been sort of this stalemate for months now?
Well, I do think that having Ambassador Gore in New Delhi with his direct channels into the president and senior levels at the administration certainly helps the case. But I also think the fact that India negotiated an ambitious trade agreement with the European Union also created some additional pressure, certainly for U.S. industry, for the United States to get its deal across the finish line. There's just a lot on the table that was left for the U.S. not to get this deal done, and I think the U.S. moved quickly to do just that.
Parikshit?
Yeah, Nisha, thank you so much for joining us. It's, of course, a big relief for Indian exporters, the Indian government, the overall tariffs coming down to 18%. I would also like to ask you, Donald Trump has said that India has agreed to buy more than $500 billion worth of oil, technology, agriculture products from the U.S. So do you think that this trade deal actually has gone beyond just a goods-related negotiation? India has finally given Donald Trump those big headline investment numbers that he was looking for, maybe some sort of broad ballpark commitments that we could deliver in the next 3 to 5 year time frame. A lot of the nitty-gritties are yet to come out, but do you think he has finally got some of those headline assurances from India?
Well, the president certainly believes that to be the case. He has made that announcement. Again, I would want to see what the details are and hear what the Indian side has committed to. There is quite a bit that India can procure from the United States that can address some of the trade imbalance that this administration has been concerned about. I would not be surprised to see some of those commitments being made. They are in the natural course of what would happen as trade between our two countries deepens and expands. So I don't think that it would be out of the realm for India to be able to aggregate what those should look like and be able to make those commitments to the United States. But again, until I see the details, I wouldn't want to go too deep on that.
Nisha, from a industry body, you've worked with industry bodies before, and the Asia Group works very closely with different U.S. businesses. Could you give us a sense on what was the expectation in terms of opening up the Indian market, and which goods was the U.S. government really pushing for lower tariffs in India?
Certainly, I think that India represents a really important and attractive market for U.S. industry across the board. There's, I think, much to be done. Obviously, I think agriculture continues to be an area that requires further negotiation. But if you look at technology, if you look at kind of, electronics, automotive, there's just a tremendous interest in for the United States to be able to deepen and expand across the Indian market, and this certainly will pave the way for that.
Prashant?
Am I on, guys?
Yeah, Prashant?
Yeah, sorry. I mean, I think Shireen, Parikshit, Nisha, I think it's been a frenetic pace over the last few days, but I don't think anyone is complaining coming into work at almost midnight, right? And it's of course much awaited. It's finally happened. And I think just to give you the headlines, GIFT Nifty, which is the indicator of, and GIFT Nifty futures are trading, they're up 700 points. And the rupee in offshore markets is up about 1.5%. So that kind of, I mean, straightforward tells you the impact this trade deal and the tariffs going from 50% to 18% is having. I have Madhu Kela joining in, and he's, agreed to join us. And I think this is a testament, of course, to how big the announcement is. Madhu bhai, good to have you with us here. Good evening.
Good evening, Prashant.
I think we'll all remember this, right?
Yeah. I'm so delighted to be awake at this hour, and I'm so delighted to join at this hour. It is such a happy moment for all of us in India, and specifically in the stock market. So happy to celebrate this moment with you guys.
Absolutely, and I think we're so glad to have you with us here. So, it's a market which is heavily, heavily short, very, very light on the long side, and you get this announcement through today. So we go higher, I mean, significantly, I mean, a few percentage points at least on the Nifty to begin with. What's your sense?
Yeah, I think, Prashant, as you rightly said, market is technically a very light and a very in a strong position. Also, what happened on Sunday, because of the knee-jerk reaction of STT, a lot of liquidation, according to me, would have even taken place even on that day. And plus, the unprecedented short position of FIIs in the future market. I think there will be not only short squeeze, but I would argue that a lot of foreign investors who have been kind of sell India mode for some time, there could be a lot of foreign buying also will come in the Indian market. So on one hand, you have domestics which will continue to buy. On the other hand, short squeeze plus some real long buying from foreign investors. So it's a perfect setting for the markets to go much higher.
And we were all, Madhubhai, sulking over the STT hike, right? So I think this now almost immediately after takes care of that, at least for now, isn't it?
Yeah, of course. Now no one will like to talk about the STT. This is a much bigger thing, Prashant, and coupled that with also the European Union deal. Right? So you have the European Union deal, you have the US deal, and now the tariff being reduced to 18%. I think this is a perfect setting for the market.
So where will this show up in a big way, Madhubhai, in terms of the index goes up, right? I mean, maybe 1,000 points, 1,500 points, we'll see where it settles, maybe more. But in terms of where this shows up, look, in terms of listed securities, listed stocks, right? This was, the impact was not that large. Some textile names, seafood, the shrimp companies and fisheries and so on, so forth. But not a very large universe because exposure to the US and the listed universe was small. But the sentiment impact is going to be dramatic. So where will this show up the most, in your opinion?
Well, it will show up on companies which have been kind of impacted, as you rightly said, some of the names. But my personal view, Prashant, is that it will show up in a lot of small cap and mid cap names. The one notable change in the budget was the buyback, right? And we have seen a lot of small cap names have been completely sold off in the last 12, 18 months. So this sentiment, coupled with the potential of companies to buy back, wherein they don't have to pay any tax. The tax is on individuals now. So I would reckon that lots of companies will end up doing buyback wherever the valuations have become really attractive. And promoters will not end up participating, thereby really increasing their stake. Now, last 2 years, Prashant, since the time dividend and buyback were being brought in at par, there has been hardly any buyback done by Indian companies. So I think that is one area, small cap and mid cap areas, where there is a potential to really for the companies to buy back shares. That is one pocket which I will look because of the improved sentiment. And of course, companies which have been kind of impacted sentimentally and otherwise by this US trade deal will be the second pocket, and third, of course, will be the pocket where foreigners can easily deploy money. Let's not, if supposing, Prashant, if people want to put $1, $2, $3 billion to work, it can only be deployed in companies which are very large and liquid, right? And that is what will see markets' attention when it opens tomorrow.
Yeah. So financials, right, in a big way, Madhubhai, right? And NBFCs, large private banks, everything. I mean, that's the pocket.
Yeah, the whole basket of financial, because that is where you can deploy large amount of money. And Prashant, the valuation otherwise in consumer companies because of growth, and technology companies because of this impending issue of AI. I think the financials become kind of obvious choice. And commodity stocks anyway have done really well over the last 1 or 2 years. So I don't see them participating as much as the financial stocks.
Yeah. Just one word, Madhubhai. So this is a kind of a permanent repair for markets in that sense, which have been suffering for the last year and a half. I mean, that often asked question, but which is a question without an answer. When will the FPI return? I mean, you think this is the answer, or at least a step in that direction? So it's not temporary. It's not 2 days and then it fizzes out. But you think this is more permanent?
No, it doesn't look like temporary, Prashant. I think this is all we could have asked for. A very good budget, a deal with EU, a deal with America, technically markets being light, people having diverted a lot of money to even precious metal and all, a lot of that will come back. So I would say maybe we have seen, I generally do not want to predict the bottoms, and we generally do not speak about levels. But what we saw maybe a few days back should be the real bottom for the Nifty for the rest of the year.
Yeah. 100%. Any other thoughts? I mean, in terms of currency perhaps also is the other one, right? But the problem there was foreign selling, no dollars, constant sort of outflow of dollars. So I think as market starts to repair, FPIs hopefully make a comeback and a more durable comeback to the market. That problem also starts to look a little better. It's all connected. It's all one big puzzle. And I think an very important piece has fallen into place. Would you agree?
Yeah, it is already reflecting, right, Prashant? The rupee from 92 already indicating that it is closer to 90. And 2% appreciation in currency is a big number. Yeah. I think this was more fear psychosis also, na, Prashant. Where it could have landed, whether there was undoubtedly there was a tension, at least in the market people. Has the relationship with America gone sour? What could be the other implication of that? All of that goes away. I would expect that the foreigners will resume buying. And this was one big event which they were waiting for. And apart from, you will also hear some real serious FDI announcement over the next 3-6 months, which was also maybe waiting in the sidelines, specifically from American companies.
Yeah. Madhubhai, you know this. The WhatsApp groups are all abuzz. No one is sleeping.
Yeah, of course. As I told you, it feels like Diwali, and thank you for having me. It's such an important event.
I just want to...
I'm really happy to do this call at 12 o'clock at night.
And you will be joining us early morning as well, Madhubhai. You told us that earlier. Let me just get Shireen in as well. Shireen, I mean, you've been listening in, and I heard the earlier conversation with Nisha. I mean, this is historic, big.
Well, it's a big day, but, Prashant, I just want to walk people back to the conversation that we were having with Rajesh Agarwal, the Commerce Secretary, just 2-3 hours ago. And when I asked him, I said, you had said that there is a framework that will be arrived at to deal with reciprocal tariffs. He said most of the sticky issues have been resolved. And we believe that there is significant progress. I can't give a timeline to you. And then we saw the ambassador tweet and so on and so forth. So, look, I think it is no doubt a big overhang that is now hopefully behind us, but we will have to look at the fine print because, while President Trump has made many claims in his post on Truth Social, including saying that India has agreed to zero tariffs. Now, what have we agreed to zero tariffs on is the question. Is it across the board? Is it blanket? We don't know. As Nisha Biswal said, that she's aware that in the negotiations, India has agreed to zero tariffs on some items, but what those are, we will have to know. President Trump also talks about the fact that India has committed to not purchasing any Russian oil. Look, our imports from Russia have been declining, but have we said no? Because so far we've maintained that it's a matter of strategic autonomy. And then, of course, he goes on to talk about that we have committed to buying more from America over and above that $500 billion number, which includes even things like agri-products. So, will it be more pecan nuts and walnuts and so on and so forth? One will have to see the fine print. But again, I go back to the comments that we got today, for instance, from the Defense Secretary, and he said, look, the defense relationship between India and the U.S. continues despite the current the tensions that we have seen. And he, in his words, said that there was no spillover on the defense aspect of the relationship. Similarly, even on critical minerals, we saw Ashwini Vaishnav in the U.S. Barely a month ago discussing the critical minerals issue, and today Jaishankar is there as well. So I think that while we look at the fine print, it will be important to see what this eventually leads to as far as a firm deal is concerned. But at the end of the day, it is now clear, and we have clarified that with of course, many people, and now it is on the record from the U.S. ambassador, including, of course, the Prime Minister. The rate on India is 18%. So the cut is from 50 down to 18%, which makes us, better than Indonesia, Vietnam, Bangladesh, etc. India at 18, Indonesia 19, Vietnam 20, Bangladesh 20, China 34. So from that point of view, it certainly is an overhang that has been addressed. And I want to go back to Madhu, who joins us almost at midnight. Madhu, and we're going to get an assurance from you on joining us bright and early tomorrow when the markets open. What do you expect on opening bell?
I think, Serena, I heard you. But for me, the most heartening thing in all of this is the tweet from Prime Minister himself that, this is all done and we have agreed and this tariff rates is 18%. So that is kind of really, really, really reassuring. So I think market will celebrate this, Serene. I think at least a few hundred points, which is what Gift Nifty is suggesting. But the more important than tomorrow, Serene, the direction, in my understanding, will change. People's mood will change, and there will be greater participation in the broader market. And this, as I was telling Prashant, even this buyback thing which has come, it would not have come in more opportune time, wherein lots of companies which are sitting on cash, and if they find the kind of corrections in a lot of smaller and mid-cap companies to the extent of 60, 70, 80%, some of those will also get converted. So for me, it's not the tomorrow event, but the mood change of the market that is more important.
Absolutely. It's important. Prashant, go ahead.
No, I was just, Shirin, actually, people are calling in saying, well, can we come on the line? And I think Arvind Sanger, perhaps, it's that kind of a day, right? A year and a half now, we've been sulking sideways, and this all, of course, it's been one big, long, sordid saga in that sense. Started with that baseline tariff, 25%, and then I think it was July, right? Late July, when that additional 25% reciprocal, the penalty on buying Russian oil came through, so it became 50. And then, it looked like we were very close around the time of the Bihar elections, if you remember. That did not happen. Later during the year, it looked like it was all ready, all set to be signed, nothing. Then you had the Commerce Secretary, Lutnick, saying, well, explaining why the deal did not happen and how, this sort of, it had fallen by the wayside. So I think this is, for those who did not give up hope, and the fact that two very large economies, very large trading players in the world, which is America and India. For how long can they be at odds with each other in such a dramatic kind of a fashion? I think that's kind of paid off in some ways. The jokes, Madhubai, are also coming in. I know someone's messaging saying, well, I think the exchanges should consider opening now, lest President Trump changes his mind by tomorrow morning.
But Prashant, before I go,
Yeah.
it's time to thank Prime Minister Modi
Yeah, yeah.
and our Commerce Minister Piyush Goyal
Yeah.
for relentlessly really trying
Yeah.
and getting this done. This
Yeah.
will really put a lot of cheers for market. For sincere thanks from all market participants.
No, absolutely. Thank you, by the way. Have a good night's sleep. We'll see you bright and early, 7 in the morning. And some more ideas, some more conversation on what is, of course, a very, very important day. Parikshit is also with us right now. And Parikshit, of course, has been... Sorry, Shireen, you want to come in?
No, I just want
Yeah.
Lata pointing out that the rupee is trading in the NDF market at 90.61, 90 paise stronger.
Yeah.
So that's what we were talking about. And the first corporate reactions have started to come in. Kumar Birla has sent a message applauding the Prime Minister and President Trump for today's trade. The reduced tariffs will help strengthen the strategic and economic ties between our two countries and provide additional opportunity for investment and collaboration. The Aditya Birla Group is the largest Indian investor in the U.S., and we see this agreement will help shape more resilient supply chains, unlock manufacturing opportunities, and drive long-term economic competitiveness in both U.S. and India. We're committed to expanding our presence and investments in the U.S. I would imagine, as Parikshit was pointing out, President Trump also wanted, some headline numbers in terms of India investing in the U.S. and so on and so forth. And this statement from Kumar Birla, an investor in the U.S., is a significant one coming on the back of this announcement.
Parikshit, there's been one long sort of news item you've covered, and the twists and the turns and so much of it, right, over the last year plus. I think starting with the Liberation Day tariffs, which was, I think, the second or the third, markets taking a plunge. And I think it all kind of sort of went sideways, especially, remember, India was the first country. We were when President Trump took charge, we were seen to be the first in line to get a deal. And we are getting a deal, perhaps later than what anyone thought, but a deal nevertheless, and a good deal if this is 18%. I mean, this is 18% all-inclusive. If you remember, we were thinking of the tariffs to land for India somewhere between broadly 15 and 20%. That was the expectation. And I suspect economists like Sajid, Samiran, and others who've written quite a bit about this perhaps would be mighty pleased with this 18% number. Of course, before any of this started, right? I mean, Shireen, the tariff was 2.5%. But I mean, that's the thing. That's the past. That's the pre-Trump era. And before this, reciprocal tariffs and other tariffs, etc., it was 2.5%. That's 18%. But, well, as in markets, they say you can look from the bottom or you can look from the high. And I think right now the right thing, of course, is to look from the high, which is essentially what Indian exporters were paying, which is 50%. And that 50% is now 18%. So I think this is very, very positive in that sense. Parikshit.
Of course, and India will have an advantage in the region as well when we look at some other economies. It may be marginal, but having said that, this was a time when we really had to clinch a deal. I had spoken to Surjit Bhalla, the former executive director at the IMF, and he said that if India has to become a Viksit Bharat, a trade deal with the United States is absolutely essential considering the exposure of our exporters. And look at what was happening right now. Till now, our exports had shown resilience, but labor-intensive exports had started seeing an impact. Your shrimp exports, your fisheries exports, they were all getting impacted in a very big way, and India had started to look for markets elsewhere. Industry bodies like FIO had started pointing out that if a trade deal does not happen now, from this quarter onwards, you will see exports seeing a dip, and probably we might start losing markets to other countries as well. We do have a deal with UK, with the European Union, but those deals have not come into effect. And the GST benefits by the European Union have also been withdrawn, which would have meant that this year would have been a year when we would have had to face a lot of impact because of 50% US tariffs. So it does come as a big relief, and it is important to note that a lot of these concessions have happened outside the trade deal. Look at what we did at the beginning of the year. We further rationalized tariffs in the union budget last year on high-end automobiles and two-wheelers. Washington apples, bourbon whiskey, the Google tax was withdrawn. All of that happened outside the trade deal. We were buying and giving commitments to buy more oil and gas. In fact, our oil purchases are up 70% year on year. Russian oil purchases are going down consecutively. It is down to 20% in our overall crude basket. We're also purchasing oil from Venezuela. We will give more long-term commitments to buy United States oil. In fact, we're getting a statement from the USISPF also saying that this is the first positive step between two countries. While the specifics are pending, the announcement signals a strong political will on both sides to move forward towards a comprehensive US-India bilateral trade agreement. So this is not a BTA. This is an initial deal that has been agreed upon. We will have to see what's the breakup across sectors, what sectors come down to zero, what are subject to quotas. And the BTA between the two nations, it says that will deliver meaningful benefits for businesses, workers, and consumers in both countries.
Right. So, Parikshit, just to go back to that, because this is what Rajesh Agrawal, the Commerce Secretary, was also pointing out, right? That the larger BTA, the bilateral will take time, but this is an early harvest deal. That's what USISPF is confirming as well, right?
That's right. This is an early harvest agreement, and it was always like this, Shireen, that it would happen in about 3 phases. At the first end, we will only look at goods tariffs. Services have not been covered. This is not a full-fledged BTA, but this is the first step towards a BTA. This deal was aimed at, one, getting rid of the oil tariffs, getting rid of the high reciprocal tariffs that the U.S. had imposed on the 2nd of April 2025. So this is the first framework deal, an early harvest deal that has been agreed upon.
Okay, Arvind Sanger, guys, is also joining us. He's someone who is a long-time India watcher, is an investor, and someone who sits out of the US, who's regularly on CNBC TV 18 with market expertise. Arvind, welcome to the program. It's, I guess, morning for you, so I should say good morning, but it's midnight for us, but we're all happy to be... Oh, it is morning for us. It is tick past 12. So, yeah, good morning. Arvind, so it's a happy occasion. It's a happy day. The deal's finally come through and it's gone to, there was a bit of apprehension early on when we saw that tweet, whether 50 has gone to 43 because it said 25 to 18 in the tweet, but it is 50 to 18. So this is a big relief in that sense. First thoughts, how will markets react, Arvind?
Well, clearly markets are going to react positively. That goes without saying. But let me tell you why I think this is much more important long-term than just a short-term euphoria. I think what India was missing in the last few years was a reluctance to take the risk to join free trade agreements. If you go back prior to this last 6 months, India was really absent in some of the trade deals that were happening around the world. Now India is suddenly integrated in a way that is very dramatic with EU, with UK, and now back on the on the table with US. To me, this is very important from a long-term standpoint. If in 1990-91 was when India kind of removed a lot of trade barriers, this one I think will also, again, there'll be some losers who may not compete well where high import duties may be helping. But, if we're getting the best of the things from the world, maybe the best cars come in and somebody loses out if high-end cars are coming in without duties. But the benefit to India is that if you are able to, and look, low-end textiles and shrimps and other things are good, and they are very important for employment. I'm not going to minimize those, or jewelry. But I think if you're thinking about India taking advantage of manufacturing opportunities, if people are building data centers and electrical equipment and all this other stuff around the world, and India can supply, equipment for that electrification for data centers. So I think there's a lot of stuff that long-term, I think this is very positive for India.
No, 100%. I mean, you and I have spoken about this, right? It's just not about the tariffs, but we are at a time of kind of sort of radical technological innovation, and American companies, American enterprises are right there at the cutting edge of it. So you need government-to-government good relations. You need business-to-business good relations, and I think this kind of enables all of that. But here and now, Arvind, the markets have been sulking. I mean, every time you join, we say, well, when will the dollar start to come in? Do you think this is a durable start to that? What's your sense?
I think for two reasons. One is obviously this deal can be a catalyst, but the second reason is that we are starting to see some bottom-up growth numbers, electricity demand, other factors, auto demand, and a few other things that are showing signs of life. So if this can act as a catalyst for, business confidence, animal spirits, consumer and business in India, it can also act as a catalyst for investors. So I think we need the virtuous cycle going on the India growth front, and I think we will definitely get follow through other than today if that becomes visible from the FII's front.
We had a bunch of money managers today, and this is, of course, on the back of the markets not feeling all that great with the SCT hike. And, people like Rhythm Desai, S. Narain, Samir Arora, Neelkant Mishra, all kind of emphasizing the importance of that feel-good, Arvind, that you spoke about, right? The sentiment, which is so important, and what that kind of sort of, gets you to do. And sometimes it gets you to buy, right? Because you're feeling good and you're feeling that, well, the good things will happen, and this is a good thing which has happened. So if you go sectorally, there is, of course, the obvious stuff which was beaten down. I mean, I used to half-jokingly call Gokuldas Exports the India-US trade deal indicator. But I guess apart from that, in direct hits, there is textiles and maybe a bunch of other specific stocks, but it's not a very long list there. But where will this show up in a big way? We had Madhu Kela with us earlier, who was saying, well, financials perhaps is one where FIs have room to buy. What would you say?
Well, I mean, I guess that's a good one. I had not directly connected financials with the trade deal, but financials are as a measure of domestic economic health. But I would say even, domestic companies and, manufacturing, especially those that have export now, the reality is that you get steel has its own exports. But if you are manufacturing equipment and if you're looking at opportunities in U.S. and India, and whether you're manufacturing engineering products or what have you, I think some of these companies, even an ABB or a Siemens or anybody planning long term of where they want to source, because look at the stocks of these companies globally. Yeah. They're seeing huge demand, huge backlog. Yeah. GV, all of these, can India become a major source for manufacturing? And there are smaller players that play in that ecosystem that could benefit. Could L&T benefit from some of this going on? Could Bharat Forge benefit? There are many such examples I can use where we need to kind of analyze, but I think there's a broad engineering products where India manufacturing can be very competitive, and now the whole world is open to Indian manufacturing.
What about IT services? Again, huge underperformance. It doesn't benefit directly because of what's happened, but I mean, it's like the export powerhouse here, right? The champion sector in terms of exports. That and pharma, of course, but IT more. Any thoughts, Arvind?
I think IT's problems are more than just tariffs. It was not affected by tariffs, and I'm not sure this will affect the H-1B kind of U.S. Crackdown on that. And so I think IT will benefit to the extent that there is a little more confidence in American businesses and European businesses that India, is integrated into the world system. But there is no real catalyst here which takes away the long-term challenge. So it'll go up, with the market performance, it can go up. But I think the near-term growth story is looking a little bit better because they're going to help implement, AI for Western companies. So maybe it gets a little bit of a benefit. But the long-term structural challenge still remains.
Yeah. We also have Mr. Anup Vadhavan, the former Commerce Secretary, with us. Mr. Vadhavan, thanks very much for joining us post-midnight, sir. Appreciate your time. The stalemate seems to have been broken. There is a breakthrough, and President Trump and Prime Minister Modi both on social media acknowledging the fact that a resolution has been arrived at which takes the tariff from 50% to 18%. Of course, the details are still awaited. But Mr. Vadhavan, after months of dithering, India, which was likely to be right at the top of the line, ended up being the last in the line, but now going through.
Yeah, it's a very good development. And, a major barrier in the economic relations between two very, very large economies. U.S., of course, is the largest in the world and 25% of the world's GDP. And India itself is not very far behind. So one of the two largest sort of economies having these barriers between them was something very detrimental to both sides.
And I'm glad, we've sort of resolved these issues. And I think in some senses, a deal which was all set to be signed, it was lying on President Trump's table, and the U.S. Commerce Secretary and President Trump himself had sort of given the signal that it was almost through. And President Trump, I remember, had said that the deal is likely in a few days virtually. And then, of course, for various reasons that we all know, things got stalled. But I'm glad, both sides have been able to work on these differences and, come back to a good sort of way forward and a win-win solution for both sides.
A win-win for both sides. Mr. Vadhavan, President Trump making many claims. Of course, India has not responded to any of the details as of now, but President Trump claims that we have agreed to buy no Russian crude. We have agreed to buy more from the U.S., a whole host of goods, and also agreed to zero tariffs. What do you make of those claims?
Yeah, I think we have to wait for the details, but in some senses, things would be in line with what was anticipated earlier. The U.S. wanted market access on various, agricultural products, horticultural products, some manufactured items, including, motorcycles and automobiles and things like ethanol. So I'm sure those 5, 6, 7 items of U.S. trade interest, India would have, allowed. Of course, while safeguarding our sensitivities in agriculture and dairy, our sensitivity on, genetically modified foods, I'm sure all those sensitivities would have been protected. And to the extent we've given market access, they would be in areas where we are comfortable. And I'm sure some mechanisms like we've used in our trade agreement with UK, trade agreement with the EU, safeguard mechanisms in terms of staging the duties, they come down over a period of time in terms of PRQs, where there's a tariff rate quota to limit the quantities. So I'm sure with all those mechanisms, we'd be fairly comfortable with what we've allowed. The thing to see is, what do we get in return? We can't be happy with 18% across the board. We have some areas of interest in labor-intensive products, textiles, leather goods, etc. So our expectation was that they would make an exception. Like the US deal with UK, the tariffs there again are not zero for UK, but then on some products of their interest, including automobiles, the US did give them sort of zero tariffs with a quota and, through such mechanisms. So let's wait and see what the details are. But I think if 18% is across the board, then we should be happy only in the sense that it is comparable to what the world is facing.
In fact, it's less than our peer groups. It is lower than, Pakistan at 19, Vietnam at 20. So it is lower than the peer group.
Right. So 15 is, in a sense, the U.S. MFN, default tariff.
Right.
So I think we would have been happiest with 15 in the circumstances with lower duties on selective items, our labor-intensive products, textiles, etc.
Right.
There, let's hope we get, below 18 there.
Sure. And let me also bring in Jayesh Mehta into the conversation. Jayesh, many thanks for joining us very early in the morning, past midnight here. Jayesh, quick take on what this now means as far as the currency is concerned, given the fact that this big overhang seems to be out of the way.
Good morning. Really good morning. I think it's very good because our biggest challenge was all the macros were very good. It is only the FPI outflows which was really, really hurting the currency, right? As it is already in the NDF market, it's almost like 90.70 right now. And we see at least 2-3 days positive flows. We can really see that maybe 89 handles very quickly. So I think from a currency point of view,
the person
very
you are
positive.
speaking with has put.
Right. Go ahead, sir.
Go on, just
Yeah, sorry. So from that perspective, that's very positive, especially even also positioning-wise, people have been on the other side, especially last 2 days. So I think that would also really help on the currency side to accelerate further. Only thing is we need to see at what time, and if the flow continues for some time, right, maybe some profit booking might come. But if the positive flows continues for more than a week, we would see a different level of dollar rupee.
Jeshbhai, the RBI meeting is this week, right? I mean, the RBI, I think Friday is when the RBI will announce its decision. Yeah. So no change was expected. You think this in any way changes things? I mean, I think it definitely takes the pressure off the governor and his team with what you're saying. I mean, if there is FPI flow which starts to turn, the problem was no dollars, right? And I think, as many have pointed out, if that starts to trickle in, start to come in a durable fashion, and I think that takes the heat off.
No, absolutely. And we are going to a situation where even after 125 basis point rate cut and after yesterday's budget numbers, the bond yields are where it is. We needed an OMO support, right? So hopefully, at least in the March month, even if the currency comes in big time, they may not buy big time. That would be good because they need to infuse liquidity by buying bonds because bonds also need support. I hope they buy the bonds rather than if we start seeing 10, 15 days of inflows. It's very tempting for RBI to buy currencies at maybe whatever level lower than 80. So hopefully at least till March, they should keep on buying bonds.
Shri, let me tell you, Jayeshbhai is, he's probably a 35-year plus veteran of the sort of treasury bond market here in India, perhaps the oldest in that sense. But he's also a very keen equity watcher. Jayeshbhai, tomorrow morning, I mean, actually not tomorrow, let's say...
Good morning.
Today morning, what do you think? I mean, by 3:30 today, what, 1,000, 1,500, 2,000? What's your... Take your pick.
If we are not 1,000, okay, then I think, as I've been saying, maybe right now let this euphoria get over and you have promised me to investigate the gross numbers, right?
I will, we will.
You have to look at gross numbers, right?
Yes.
So that's a very different story on the gross numbers. Just to keep Shirin and others on that, basically we have, when we look only at net numbers, 3,000 crores outflow, but every day there's minimum of 13 to 15,000 crores inflow. And 18,000 crores outflow. So what is that inflow? If India is so negative, why is this inflow coming?
Yeah. And of course, I mean, we'll as I promised you, Jayeshbhai, we are looking into it and we will. But you didn't tell us what's the at least 1,000, right? That's what you are saying, Jayeshbhai.
Yeah. It has to be minimum. It cannot be less than that. If it is less than that, it will be very disappointing. Then you will have some, a lot of people, because we have a lot of pain also, right, on the commodity.
No, I mean,
side,
the market is light. Huge amount of shorts in the system still. I mean, I think short positioning in index contracts was the highest ever. I mean, I think higher than the COVID depths of COVID, right? So it's a heavily short market, and I think a trigger like this, no one was expecting. It all started, what, two hours back, Shireen? With that tweet, and then, of course, about the Commerce Ministry telling you what he said.
Well, that's right. But also, if you look at the signs, the Trump in Davos giving us that comment saying that, we're going to get a good deal. And since then, even the Indian side has been maintaining that things are progressing. But I don't think that anybody saw it coming today specifically, even though the Commerce Secretary, as I said in his conversation with me just a few hours ago, had said that there was convergence and a lot of the sticky issues, in his words, had been ironed out. But I don't think that there was an indication that we would see the deal tonight. But it certainly has taken people by surprise, the timing of it. But then that's President Trump for you. I mean, when is he not surprising the world? So that's very clear. And I also have to say, Prashant, and I was mentioning that when we were talking to Nisha Biswal, I think Sergio Gore's arrival in India has made a difference. It's made a change, even though Sergio Gore is sort of, saying that it's not about him and it's about the work that's been done by the two leaders. But ever since he got to India, he is in the inner circle of President Trump. He's been hitting the ground running. He's done trips to Mumbai to meet with the regulators. He's been meeting with ministers. He's been meeting with government officials. And the tone and tenor has been since the very first day about building bridges and how important India is and how a strategic partner India is and so on and so forth. So I think, Sergio Gore perhaps has played a part in finding that conduit, becoming that conduit to President Trump, and in a way breaking that stalemate. So I think that's important as well to note. But of course, now we need to look at the fine print. We need to look at whether the tariff reduction is immediate or is it tied to any further technicalities.
Yeah. Shireen, the other thing is, right, all these deals which are coming through, we were all kind of wondering whether this is, when you announce a deal, it's like a framework of a deal, right? And the actual deal is the, I guess, thousands of pages which have got to be agreed upon by both sides, and that takes time, and that's tedious, etc., etc. So is that kind of the way to read that as well? I'll ask Anup Vadhavan that question in just a bit. But Prashant Paroda of Allspring Capital is also with us, so maybe I can bring him in. Prashant, thanks very much for joining us. It's good morning for us. It's good morning for you. And it's, of course, a good morning. Again, I mean, the deal coming through, 18% from 50%. Your thoughts? What does this do for capital markets here in India?
Yeah, in India, there's a saying, "De rai but durastai." So I guess from our perspective, I think India has been lagging so far this year as well. If you look at the MSCI Emerging Markets Index, it's up 8% and change. India has been negative so far this year. So we see a lot of catching up to do. I think this was a big headwind from a market perspective, from foreign investors' perspective. So we believe this kind of cements the relationship. Obviously, the details are yet to come. But longer term, what it does, not only for this year, but on a 3 to 5 year basis, if India and U.S. are to come together, people really need to understand the context of that for the next decade or so.
Yeah. Prashant, you run a fairly large portfolio across emerging markets here in India as well. But I guess the last 1 year, you've been kind of focusing on, I guess, other markets, right? Korea and Taiwan, et cetera, not so much here. I mean, of course, you've got a sizable stock of investments in India. Would you put more money into the country, into specific sectors, which you like, but perhaps, I mean, there was just this cloud, not just the lack of a trade deal with the US, but I mean, other things like growth, but it's all one big cycle. One kind of feeds into the other in so many ways. Just your thoughts, Prashant.
Yeah, incrementally, I think, India does. I mean, if you think about it, India had really outperformed till 2024 almost. And 2025 was, definitely a catch-up for all the other countries. But the way we look at it is, India gives you access to growth, which is intrinsic. A lot of financials are still growing north of 12, 13% loan growth rates, and the GDP growth is really doing well. So if you look at from a 3 to 5 year perspective, I think incremental dollars will come to India. You do have to be selective given the valuations, but I think there will be a turn in sentiment from foreign perspective as and when this trade deal details come out as well.
Prashant, Parikshit has some information. Perhaps we should just get some of the details out from him. Parikshit, anything fresh that you have for us?
Well, we've now heard from 3 sources, Shireen and Prashant, telling us that there is going to be more documentation on the India-US trade agreement. Today, Donald Trump and Prime Minister Modi have announced a trade deal. And that is what Vinay Quatra, the Indian ambassador to the United States, has also said, that both nations have today announced a trade deal. But we have to see how these tariffs will come down to 18%. Now, I have spoken to sources in the US government and in the White House, and they both indicated that there will be a formal signing in the coming days. White House sources saying on the condition of anonymity that there is going to be more documentation between both sides in the next few days or within a week. Now, External Affairs Minister Subramaniam Jaishankar is going to be in the US right now. In fact, we believe that he is getting a briefing from top-level sources in the government at this juncture on the trade deal, and He's there in the US. He will be meeting Marco Rubio, and it's quite possible that the trade deal signing or the official documentation could happen while Jaishankar is in the United States. So Donald Trump wanted some sort of big deal to happen. The moment Sergio Gore tweeted this morning, it was quite clear that something is really cooking. There were some positive sentiments around that. So I would be looking out for a couple of things. What are the items which will go down to zero tariffs for the United States? Donald Trump has said India will be bringing tariffs down to zero for US goods and also bring down non-tariff barriers completely. Let's see how much India has opened up. But Piyush Goyal, Ashwini Vaishnav have now tweeted to say that this really shows the strong political relationship between the two countries, and it really does. We've been able to overcome the differences and have a trade deal, but it's really the first step. There is a lot to be discussed. We haven't got a reprieve on H-1B as well. We'll have to wait and see how that develops. So the first step has been achieved. This will have to be put in some sort of official documentation, and I believe a formal statement from the Ministry of Commerce, which has been leading this negotiation, Rajesh Agrawal. We spoke to him earlier today, and he had told us there is really no sticking point that has left. Whatever was difficult has already been thrashed. And Piyush Goyal, too, in an interview to CNBC TV18 on budget day, just after the budget, he had said, I'm very hopeful of a very good deal with the United States very soon. Talks are progressing very, very well.
Yeah.
So in the next 2 to 3 days, perhaps, we will see official documentation.
And that is an important point that you make, Parikshit, because again, for the benefit of our viewers, don't assume that the tariff cut will be effective tomorrow or today. Because
Absolutely.
we're already well past midnight. So I think don't assume that the tariff cut will be effective today.
Sorry to interrupt, Shireen. The first step for our viewers will be an executive order from the White House. There will be 2 executive orders, I've been told by my sources. One will be on removing the oil tariffs of 25%, and the second executive order would be on bringing down reciprocal tariffs from 25% to 18%. Then making the change in U.S. customs notifications, and that's when it will actually take place. But before that, there could be some sort of official documentation exchange between India and US also.
Yes. And thanks very much, Parikshit, for explaining that to us. So there is technicalities, formalities, procedural stuff that will have to be taken forward before this 18% becomes effective. Let's get back a very quick comment from Mr. Vadhavan. Mr. Vadhavan, what would you now believe in terms of the next step? The point is that many claims being made there by the U.S. president. Russian oil, do you think that an assurance would be likely? Would we have given that assurance? And, how do you see India responding to that? Because this is a sensitive matter. Russia is a long-term ally and a strategic defense partner as well.
I'm not sure about, the veracity of that sort of claim or statement. I'm sure even, as far as Russian oil is concerned, some middle ground will be found, that is practically acceptable to both sides. So I don't see an extreme position being accepted by India that we'll buy no Russian oil. Some middle ground will arise. I think that is my feeling, but let's see what happens. And I don't think the U.S. should or would expect that kind of extreme, position being accepted by India, sort of. So I expect a middle ground there also,
Yeah, and Prashant, I just want to point out for the benefit of our viewers, Lindsey Graham. Now, remember, why is Lindsey Graham important? Because Lindsey Graham is the one who was at the forefront of taking on this battle, saying that you need to hit India with punitive tariffs and so on and so forth. Lindsey Graham tweeting saying, well played, President Trump. I think your message about ending this war by having Putin's customers who prop up his war machine have to recalculate is working through their behavior. India has more than earned this reduction. I'm hoping that other big nations will also come will also follow India's direction. Putin will come to the table when the pain is so great. We're not there yet, but with India's actions, we're moving closer and the bloodbath in Ukraine now. So this is Lindsey Graham, the man who was at the forefront of the imposition of the punitive tariffs, tweeting on this.
Shireen, if you remember Scott Bessent, right? I mean, I think he said it on so many television channels, networks, etc., over the last 2 months. And this is after the India-EU trade deal was done, and obviously visibly upset at the Europeans. Saying, well, I remember this one thing. I'm really disappointed. I'm paraphrasing. I'm really disappointed with the Europeans. We are imposing tariffs on Russia's customers, but they are buying processed oil, processed crude from countries that we are penalizing. And in a way, sort of, they're circumventing and short-circuiting this entire thing, which we are trying to do. And now they go ahead and sign this deal. So I think there is perhaps that realization as well, right? That countries are not waiting. Countries are signing deals and they're moving ahead. So there is, of course, this oil bit, as you pointed out, Mr. Graham, saying in that post. But I think there is also perhaps this, in that sense, realpolitik that the world is not waiting, and countries will sign and move on bilateral treaties and so on and so forth. And the pace of it actually was accelerating. So I think that realization very much perhaps also a prime mover for what we've seen today. And I think behind the scenes, as you said, that role of Sergio Gore, and I think we should, in a way, tip our hat to the man, because he's been, of course, in India, as you said, hectic meetings in Mumbai, flying in, meeting business leaders, etc. I remember, when he took charge, it was that Friday, and I think he was supposed to take charge on that Monday, and there was very little chatter. We reported, of course, we put out that he's going to take charge on that Monday, I think over the weekend, but it was kind of this. He was like a unknown entity till that point in time. But of course, slowly people realize that this is a person who's not a career diplomat in that sense, but very much in President Trump's inner circle, and in that sense could be influential to taking India's message. And this is someone who doesn't need to go through the regular bureaucratic channels, can pick up the phone, apparently, as the Wall Street Journal article said, and get President Trump on the phone line. So I think that is the other thing which has worked very well for speeding up this deal.
Absolutely, and only 38, Prashant. That's something.
That is depressing.
Piyush Goyal tweeting. We've got Devendra Fadnavis tweeting. Ashwini Vaishnav tweeting. So all the ministers now tweeting about how this is a big day for Make in India and opening up possibilities and so on and so forth. But Jayesh Mehta and now the Home Minister Amit Shah, big day for India-US relations as the trade deal has been locked with a significantly reduced tariff of 18%, paving the way for stronger trade ties and mutual growth. So all the ministers now, the cabinet up and tweeting away. Jayesh Mehta, to Prashant's point, I think the realization in the US that, look, and this started, we saw this even in Davos, Carney going to Beijing, Merz is on his way to Beijing sometime this month. India has, of course, re-engaged with China. And the big India-EU FTA, the EU also kind of renegotiating, resetting its ties. So the message that the world was moving on, perhaps also putting pressure on the Trump administration to get this done.
No, so absolutely. So once moving on, and as somebody said before, right, for India, this is really a big thing because now, unlike before, we are actually now in trade with everybody, right, on both ways, reciprocal basis, import as well as export. So I think that itself is, we are moving out of the shell, and as we have always seen that we work out the best when we are pressurized, and I think this really kind of worked out pretty well. And from that perspective, I think this really looks good. And as Parikshit said, that 25 penalties getting off immediately. Other thing will follow. The detail will follow. The documentation will take time. But at least from a market perspective, it's a great relief required at this juncture.
Sorry, let me go back again to Mr. To Arvind Sanger. Arvind, I don't know. I don't think we're going to get to bed anytime soon. But what do you believe the FIIs are likely to do tomorrow morning on first trade?
Well, I think there will be obviously inflows for the first day, but it's more important than just counting the first day is what's going to happen over the next week or the next month. I think this is the point that I made earlier, and your last speaker just repeated that point, which is that I think for those of us who think about long term and medium term, this is really India has really come out of this external pressure, very well position from a global integration, and it's kind of a force. You've had the GST rationalization, you have free trade deals everywhere. Unfortunately, that STT was a unnecessary negative. In the middle of all this, but I think overall, I believe that this should act as a catalyst for FIs to believe that the India growth story now has medium to long-term legs, which are going to be much stronger than they were 6 months ago or 9 months ago, or even a week ago.
Absolutely, and I think Prashant, if you want to come in, and Arvind, if you want to comment in as well, is this President Trump? This is his second year, right? I mean, the first 30 days felt like 100 days with the amount of news flow, really head spinning. But do you think, as we head into the latter part of the year with the midterms, etc., approaching, I mean, in a way, President Trump has done the big stuff. He may come up with more things, but do you think it'll be a more in Hindi, as they call it, a more tehra hua term from here on? What's your sense, Prashant? If you want to come in first, there is that national security document which you and I spoke about, which was put out in November last year, which lays out strategic objectives and how they want the Western Hemisphere. They want to throw out China's influence and retreat from everywhere else, but consolidate power. So I'm just saying, from a larger perspective, as Arvind was also pointing out, do you think it's going to be a little more calmer without these big wild actions which were unprecedented over the last year or so? What's your sense, Prashant?
Yeah, I think he's definitely going to focus more as the midterms come closer to domestic issues, and affordability is the key term for 2026 when it comes to U.S. local elections. So the focus might move more towards kind of internal issues, but from a geopolitical standpoint, I think there's some issues that are still pending, which is the Ukraine-Russia war. And if there is some conclusion there as well, that will be a big catalyst from a geopolitical context for everyone. So I think we are moving in the right direction with regards to trade deals. And the Russia-Ukraine war could happen to have a truce there as well. And then the focus will move to domestic affordability issues that he's tweeted about in the recent past as well.
Arvind, what's your sense? Have you seen all the wild stuff, or you think it's still to come, more stuff over the next 3 years or so?
Well, there is that old saying about that scorpion taking a ride on a turtle and saying, "I will not bite you because we'll both drown in the middle of the river," and then he can't help himself. So and does it, and they both drown. And so President Trump, despite wanting to have discipline, I'm not sure that he's going to help himself by being chaotic as he's always been. But having said that, it's clear that on Iran, he's back down this weekend. Remember, there was a by-election in Texas where there was a 25-point swing against the Republicans, where President Trump had won at 17 points, and it went in the other way by, I think, 12 points or something like that. So Indian Americans are an important constituency. There's many reasons, that may not be a very important factor in the trade deal, but it may just be that domestic political considerations, might want to drive into some of these decisions that President Trump is making, and I think therefore we may see a little bit less chaos. Although I'm not sure he can help himself.
these approval ratings are a big thing, right? In US, in the US, Arvind, where are we at with President Trump? I mean, are we at a high? Are we at a
He's in
low?
the 30s right now.
And that's
think,
like a low
Trump
for
is
the
in the
term, for
30s.
this term.
Yeah, it is a low for the term.
I mean, and so perhaps, right? I mean, lots of things go into the mix, but some of these domestic political considerations also going into the mix, Arvind. Would you say?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that look, getting rid of some of the chaos and getting a little bit more on message is something I'm sure his domestic advisors are giving. So I think that's really important.
Arvind, as you look at India, and you must have heard this announcement to the tax break, right? It's a 20-year plus tax break to get data center build out in the country, in India, in a big way. And the hope is it will attract tens of billions of dollars into the country. What else do you think, I mean, we should really focus on to build our capabilities? Because as you earlier pointed out, I mean, this is an era of huge amounts of technological change, not just with regards to AI, but everything, so many industries which are getting transformed.
Yeah, I think, on the data center thing, domestic data center for domestic consumption, they should do everything to encourage. I'm not sure anybody's coming to India for cheap electricity or cheap land or anything that would cause them to set up global data centers in India. So I'm not sure how far that'll go, but I think in general, thinking about ways in which India can be a manufacturing and a service provider to the AI boom, in terms of helping implement it, but also providing equipment that is going to be needed, because the real challenge is going to come in terms of the equipment needed and the manufacturing infrastructure to build data centers, and then AI implementation. So I think all of that, thinking about the future, and electronics, obviously, India has made a big push in, and I think Make in India, this will benefit. So I think all of these forward, look, we've talked about textiles, large employer, gems and jewelry, large employer, but these future-facing industries, that's where, having free trade with the rest of the world and then having a vision of how to implement it is going to be very important.
Prashant, same question to you.
Yeah, I think when you look going forward, India has been missing out on the AI story. So this tax breaks that have been given is actually might spur up action, whether it's data centers, India still has a lot of ChatGPT users. So I think this is a way for the government to help innovation, drive innovation in the sector. And I believe a lot of the large conglomerates that have the capital to do that. So one of the big things that has been missing amongst the large conglomerates is the ability to kind of do big ticket sort of CapEx projects. And I think data centers is one such avenue. So there's more to be learned from the story, but I think a lot of things and positive things will happen in the future as well. And we might see more names that will come out in the public markets that are data center providers that will get investors access to this growth opportunity.
Mr. Vadhavan, just one question to you. I mean, if there are few further negotiations to be done with regards to this agreement or other areas, etc., between India and US, and there will be, right, other industry sectors, etc., where agreements have to be stuck and they will be negotiated, etc. I know it's not binary, but given the way this entire trade deal has now come to fruition, would you, I mean, for the lack of a better way to put it, I'm asking you, does one or the other party have a bit of a slightly upper hand here? The way, I mean, India's conducted itself, which has been, in a way, strategic silence. And from the other side, of course, we've seen a fair bit of bullying and, threats and all kinds of things. Go on.
I won't say that any side has an upper hand, but you see, this is not a typical free trade agreement as envisaged under WTO provisions, where the tariff concessions have to be very comprehensive across, more than 90% of the tariff lines, like we've done with EU and we've done with UK. This is a trade agreement where some very limited areas of ambition related to goods which were long-standing, in terms of both countries' maintaining these ambitions. So those have been, addressed. So it's a very limited trade agreement. It's not a free trade agreement. And the hope is that India has, some areas of ambition in services, like all these H-1B visas, etc., and all our, offshore businesses. So some areas of ambition which India has, the hope is that in the next stage we'll be discussing services and those will get addressed. But the scope of everything is very limited, and I think both sides never agreed to a free trade agreement, which necessarily under WTO law has to be, very comprehensive and very extensive. So I don't think any side has an upper hand. Basically, both sides will get some of their key long-standing ambitions in goods addressed through the deal, and it'll go on to services, and some of India's areas of interest should get addressed. And there again, there's a mutual interest. No matter how much concern the U.S. might have on the H-1B visas, ultimately,
Absolutely.
the U.S. can't do without, H-1B visas. And even in terms of labor force availability at
Absolutely.
a more rudimentary level for agriculture or the hospitality businesses, they're already feeling the crunch, with labor shortages at the lower end. And at the higher end, you'll need H-1B visas, to manage all your scientific institutions, your universities, all your high-tech businesses. So ultimately, services, again, there'll be something where, the mutual interest of both countries will get served. But we shouldn't confuse this with a comprehensive free trade agreement, which is far more extensive. And I think on the whole, it'll end up being fairly balanced. I don't think any particular side has an upper hand. But let's see the details. I think we need to wait for that.
No, that's absolutely correct. Arvind, thank you very much for joining us. I know that you have another call and it's a full work day there. So it's been a full work day here as well. So what am I saying? Thank you very much for joining us and really appreciate your time, your thoughts, your insights on what's happening.
Right now,
go on, Parishit, go on.
I had a question to you, and this is with regard to what do you think really got us across the finish line? We've been here at this spot, close to signing a trade deal almost 5 times last year. In fact, Jamieson Greer in December had said that India has offered the best possible deal ever. And now they have to do more in terms of stopping purchases of Russian oil. What is that extra assurance that we've given? Finally, what was that X factor which got us across the finish line?
So the question is for
Mr. Madhavan.
Okay. Yes, my feeling is that ultimately, as I just mentioned, 2 very, very big major economies could not afford to have these frictions, between them for too long. They would, have implications beyond the economic sphere. They would have implications on the geopolitical relationship. So just a matter of time where the heat of these issues got dissipated and in some ways, better sense prevailed and an agreement was reached. But reading, the EU agreement as a factor behind this happening or something else as a factor, I think would be attributing too much to those aspects. My feeling is that this, by its very definition and nature, could not have lasted too long. And I guess on Russian oil also, some balanced sort of situation has arisen over time. So that, again, might have been a comforting factor for the U.S. side. So on the whole, I think the basic imprudence in continuing this for too long was felt by both sides, and a solution was reached. That would be my understanding.
One last question, Mr. Radhavan. Mr. Rajesh Agrawal, the Commerce Secretary, is tweeting to say this landmark deal will unlock shared prosperity, innovation, growth for 2 natural partners. Congratulations to the people of India. Now, for an Indian exporter, if you had to explain when these tariffs or changes will come into effect, what is the kind of documentation we'll have to see? Sources in the White House have said there will be some documentation exchanged in the coming days.
Yeah. So you see, this will happen very quickly because it's not a free trade agreement. where there is extensive documentation which has to be legally scrubbed and scrutinized. This is a very, very limited agreement on some, goods. It doesn't have the typical chapters which a free trade agreement will have on rules of origin, on customs procedures, on dispute resolution, all sorts of things like that. So this will come into effect very quickly. The Russian tariffs will go the moment, President Trump signs that order, and even the other executive order will be very simple in nature. It is just going to, I think it won't be an agreement going beyond, say, a maximum of 50, 60 pages. That would be my estimation. So I think the moment they sign this deal, within days after that, the executive orders will issue, and I think max, I would say 2 months, all these sort of points would come into effect, and the lower tariffs would start prevailing. It might happen even sooner.
Right. Hopefully within a week or so.
Yeah. It could well happen within a week or 10 days also. But I'm putting an outer limit of, say, a month for everything to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. It's a relief for Indian exporters in a big way. We're seeing the kind of reactions from the Indian government. Shireen, Prashant, this is a story that has been an overhang for the Indian markets. The exporters were really worried, and the budget was all about resilience, giving relief measures, reducing the import costs for exporters in all the impacted sectors. We saw that and we discussed that in a great detail. So Jaishankar is there in the United States this week, and I'm sure this visit coincides with developments related to trade. And we're expecting some sort of signing now, some sort of conclusion to this in the coming days. But we will also have to see what more assurances have been given to the United States. Have we said that we will be buying $500 to $600 billion worth of products? India has not said so. Donald Trump has said so. So probably the fine print of what we have offered beyond the trade deal to get this done will also be clearer in the coming days.
Well, it was Scott Bessent, Prashant, and Parikshit who, in an interview that I saw a few days ago, said, President Trump called him at 1:52 a.m. and said, "Scott, are you awake?" And he said, "Yes, President, I'm always awake at 1:52 a.m." This seems to be the state of play. This is the new world order. And we've seen this late night or early morning announcement coming in. We, of course, will continue to track all the action. We'll be there with the market action as the markets open. Remember, the GIFT Nifty is already telling us the last I checked, it was up by about 700 points.
Yep.
The rupee has recovered almost 90 paise stronger on the back of this development. And here's the man of the hour, along, of course, with President Trump and Prime Minister Modi, Sergio Gore, the U.S. ambassador of India, who was the first to kind of give us a hint that something was coming when he posted a picture of the Prime Minister, when he posted saying that the Prime Minister and President Trump had a conversation, and he hinted and asked all of us to stay tuned, and we did. And here's Sergio Gore in conversation with our colleague Zaka Jacob.
Ambassador Gore, many congratulations. India and the U.S. now have a trade deal. Can you give us a little more details on how this was achieved and how this was arrived at?
Yes, thank you for having me on tonight. Look, all the credit goes to President Trump and Prime Minister Modi. Since I arrived in India about a month ago, I have said, and I truly mean it, that the two leaders have a great personal relationship. And that is something that carried this deal forward. The potential between India and the United States is limitless. And so I'm thrilled that India is getting this 18%, which is a massive drop from the previous number. We have incredible deals ahead. And so, as I've said since I've arrived here, the best is yet to come.
So, Ambassador, if you could clarify for our viewers, India was paying 25% reciprocal tariffs and 25% Russian oil tariffs. The second set of Russian oil tariffs are now removed, so India just pays 18% tariffs. Is that the final rate?
That is correct. As you saw in the truth that the president wrote, part of the agreement is that all nations around the world stop buying oil from Russia in order to bring peace to the situation. And I know the Prime Minister deeply cares about bringing peace in that conflict, as does President Trump. So the number, as it gets finalized, will be that 18%.
What about on the question of the other assurances which President Trump has mentioned in his post that the Indian Prime Minister reportedly made to him? Could you walk us through that, please?
I will leave that to the trade negotiators. As you know, ambassadors don't necessarily have in their portfolio the trade deal. But overall, this is incredible news. 18%. There's a lot of demand. When the United States is open for business under President Trump, it's a new era. And frankly, from the start, we've said the president has a great relationship with the Prime Minister. A lot of people did not believe that. He truly does have a great relationship with the Prime Minister. And this is why this happened. Under President Trump's leadership, we have renegotiated deals all over the world. So this was not anything specific to one country or another. However, I will say that this trade deal is more favorable because of their relationship.
Well, that is the U.S. Ambassador to India, Sergio Gore, there speaking to Zaka Jacob and confirming that the tariff reduction is, in fact, 18% down from 50%. And of course, the ambassador said he would not like to get into the details of what has been agreed on, as that is the remit of the trade negotiators, in this case, Jameson Greer, the USTR. In the tweet that the Prime Minister has put out, Prime Minister Modi tweeting, acknowledging the tariff reduction to 18%, saying it's great news for Make in India and 1.4 billion Indians, but also not getting into the details of any commitments made, assurances given, and so on and so forth. Similarly, whether it is Piyush Goyal, the Commerce Minister, Ashwini Vaishnav, the IT Minister, or just a few moments ago, the External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar, who is currently in the U.S., also tweeting, welcoming the move, calling it a historic step in the bilateral relationship between India and the U.S., and saying that the reduction is 18%. But as we know, we will have to wait for the executive orders to be signed before the tariff reduction becomes effective. And more importantly, we will have to see the fine print to understand what has been agreed on in terms of tariff reduction on the Indian side. What has India agreed to? President Trump claims zero tariffs. Is it zero tariffs across the board? Is it zero tariffs on specific goods? That is what we need to understand. Also, he talks about buying more from America. What does that mean in terms of defense, energy, agriculture? He specifically mentions agriculture. So those are details that are awaited. As of now, the Indian government has not put out any statement explaining the fine print or the contours of the agreement that has been inked. All we do know for a fact is that both sides have now acknowledged that the tariff reduction will be down to 18% from 50%. Markets will react. They will react positively, as will the currency, and that is what all indicators are suggesting at this point in time. We are going to leave it tonight, but we'll be back in just a few hours from now. Parikshit and Prashant, many thanks for joining me here, and many thanks to all of our guests for tuning in and joining us very early in the morning. I hope we've provided some clarity on where things currently stand. And as I pointed out, after tonight's breakthrough, executive orders on tariff cuts awaited before we operationalize the reduction. Fine print on the commitments made on Russian crude and tariffs on specific goods awaited. The U.S. ambassador to India has clearly played a crucial role in ending the stalemate, and the big overhang has been lifted for the markets. Many thanks to all of our viewers who did tune in to us early in the morning, and my thanks to Parikshit, to Prashant, and of course our back-end team who've been working the phone lines, who've with a very skeletal team in office been putting this show together. So many thanks to our team who has worked round the clock to ensure that we're on the air at this hour. From all of us here, good morning, good night, and see you bright and early.